Open your mind to the way, the conscious way, the way of conscious mindfulness. Hello, good evening, and welcome. My name is Sifu Boggy. Sifu means guide, muse, somebody points you along the way, who guides you on your path. Boggy is my martial art and my healing and spiritual name, and it means the balancer between the chaos and the calmness. And for the last 39 years, I've been studying the Taoist arts. The Tao means the way, the path to balance. I'm studying things like Tai Chi, Qigong, Tic Tac, Tui Na, Chinese massage, reflexology, Shun Qi Shen, which is Chinese Reiki, as well as actually doing traditional Eastern Reiki and many other techniques. Now, that's me. That's what I'm about. What's this show all about? This show is Lightcode Discussions with me, Sifu Boggy, and the beautiful, the wonderful, the ever so awesome Denise Chadwick. So good evening, Denise. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. It's been a funny old year, hasn't it? It's been a funny old decade. I've been in a lot of hibernation. I thought that might finish as soon as spring came, but it's been continuing, but I'm good. Is the long answer.
Yeah. Well, I've just moved down to the coast, so I'm down at Worthing now. So and I'm still working in London, but I'm living down in Worthing, and it's I was saying to actually the doc, the mighty Doc Delaney, that it's really interesting how, it's something you hear a lot, or like follow your passion, follow your bliss, go with your blisses. And it's for a long time that the coast has always been in my heart. I've lived down here like once before, but only for a short period of time. And my daughter lives in Worthing as well. And I always wanted to be down here, and I finally get down here, but everybody seems to be so like, oh, this is a terrible mistake. Oh, you're traveling so much. Oh, and it's like, it's almost like, like this attack against me for following my bliss, which I find highly amusing, really. Unfortunately, I don't let things like this upset me, but I find it highly amusing that, so many people I know seem to have a great objection with me living down near the coast. It's like I'm affecting the universe. It's going to fall apart because I've broken some sort of forbidden rule that I apparently didn't know about.
So is that people where you were? Are they, or is it just a general thing?
People that I work with, people, even my family to a degree. It's very interesting. Very interesting thing. I mean, let's say for me, it's the best thing I've done for a long time. And I used to, like, in the old days, back in the 90s, when we had my teachers, when I was learning Qigong and martial arts and Shun Dao, and all the stuff I've learned, I would go different places. So I'd go to China and Russia and different places. And so I was used to long journeys. I was used to, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 24-hour flights when I used to go to the Maldives. So like 3 hours, and I'm not driving the train. I wouldn't mind driving the train, but I'm not driving the train. So it's not, or driving the car. So there's no actual stress. It's like I go sleep, watch a movie, read a book, all of that sort of stuff. So, and then when I get here, as I've said many times so far already, it's like my house on one side. My house looks into the beautiful green fields and pastures of Sussex. Is because that's the thing with the bottom of the UK, the Sussex area. They tend to, you go a few miles in, and then all you see is nothing but fields. And you're so close to the coast, and yet you're also so close to the countryside. And I'll go the other way, 10 minutes down the road, and I'm next to the sea and next to the old pier. And where I am, I'm in the Worthing is sort of it's a town, but it's sort of a little bit of an older town where like Brighton is very hip and very modern. Worthing's a little bit slower, and like a Sunday night and a Monday night is like ghost town sort of thing. But and then so if you want life, life, you go to Worthing, which is I'm sorry, go to Brighton, which is only half an hour away. So, but for me, I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. But just find it really interesting how other people seem to have a big issue with it's all again. It's like saying like how is me doing this affecting you? How would it be affected? But it's almost like the universe is, or something in the universe is in their consciousness is making them go, no, you're breaking the rules, you're leaving the matrix, or whatever it is. I don't know. But it
and really, go on.
I just said I just find it really interesting. I've gone through a little bit of a hero's journey, in about 6 weeks. Gone through a whole big cycle of realizing, because for years I've come down here, if not every week, or here or Brighton, I've come down here every week or every fortnight, because it chills me out. It's my thing. So this makes so much sense, and I'm almost spending less now than I was when I was going down once a week. And like and let's say for the last, apart from last year because of COVID, but the year before, every single weekend, because my weekends, the job I do, the shifts are all over the place. It's like a 5-week rota, so no weekend, no day working or off is ever the same. So my days change all the time. But every time I had a day off, I'd be down the coast. I would travel down and come down the coast. And actually just realised something, that when I used to do that, so I'd go down, like say on the first day off, second day off, I'd do nothing but sleep a lot of the time, because it was like I got all that energy and then I was assimilating it. Like I say, not necessarily I was worn out, but it was just I just needed a rest. And it's funny, it's totally flipped that, at least for this month, I've been trying going to and fro every day to work. So I'm doing 10-hour shifts at work, plus I'm doing 6 hours of traveling. So it's 16-hour day. But then I get back, I walk down, have half an hour on the beach, then come back and I go to bed, go to sleep. And that's been all my working days. That's sort of my life. And some people go, oh, you can't do that, that's not. And it's like, yeah, but what else would I do? I'm for me, I'm not a great telly watcher, so I'll be reading a book, or I'll be doing stuff on the internet for all the different shows I do and all the different stuff I do, and I can do that on the train. So why is it a problem? Why is it's costing me a lot, but but also, if I can eventually earn that back, it's not a problem. So why is it a problem? I just find it very interesting. It's
And if you're happy, shouldn't that be the main thing? Like,
yeah. I mean, maybe it's the boggy energy that everybody, if you're not boggy, it's, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. But because you're boggy, oh no, that's got to be. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up now, but I just find it interesting how illogical. I mean, yeah, it's a crazy thing I'm doing, but then it's my choice at the end of the day. But how much people seem to be really remarking about it a lot, I find very interesting. But anyway, so what
are we supposed to be on gallery view, by the way?
Say that again.
Are we supposed to be on gallery view on YouTube? So we're both there, or do you normally have it the other way?
Right, okay. I try to see. I don't know what.
Maybe that's because you're on your phone.
Yeah.
I think they can only do gallery view if there's more than 2 people.
Okay. Well, we could do this. So if I do that, does it give you the option to change it?
Because I think whatever goes live is however you're set up on your phone. So I've got it on gallery view because I'm not on a phone. Oh, good. Oh, good. I just wondered because normally,
Yeah.
it has his live side by side.
I know. At the moment, it's I can either see a tiny little picture of me or a big picture of you. I can't see both, but I'm sure on the phone it used to give you the option for both, but it doesn't anymore.
Yeah, it did. They changed it.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so what energies have been coming in for you, or what's been, energetically, what have you been feeling over the past? I don't know, we haven't seen each other for a while, so the past couple of months.
Well, for me, I've been really, and I've been doing this for a long time, but it's got even more so, focusing inwardly very much, focusing on my physical body, really bringing as much energy as I can into my physical body. And those areas where I can feel that there's something not in alignment, or I can feel that it's just not full of light, that there's, that it's a bit all over the place or just not in balance, then I've been working on those areas. And there's been some health stuff in my body for years, for more than 20 years, which is probably partly why I got into doing energy work in the first place. And I've been there's definitely been some improvement in that. And some of this is the first time that there's been improvement in certain areas of my body for years. Like some of this, when I fell down the stairs at school and displaced my sacroiliac joint. So I've been working on that, not as purely as I have in the last few years, but for a long time, osteopathy, the whole kit and caboodle. But I had quite a dramatic shift in that and in the pain levels in my body before Christmas. And that's continued. And this has been really interesting because I'm seeing a chiropractor quite often. And she can tell the difference in my body. It's almost like if we have such a thing as a pain body, it's like the pain body has shrunk. Or I've got to the point where I've released so much pain in my body, because that's what I spend a lot of time doing, that is actually noticeable in my body. And something that has clicked as well. So a lot of this is very body orientated. Something that clicked for me quite recently has been fascia and lymphatics. So this is a lot to do with all the connections. And it's interesting as we're moving out of separation, that all these connective tissue things are really coming to light at the moment. So I've done a fascia, a 2-week, she calls it a 2-week fascia miracle. It's like 2 weeks of stretching different fascia in your body, which doesn't tend to get stretched normally. We might do fascia releases, but fascia stretching, yoga doesn't really touch fascia stretching, for example. So these are very different forms of stretching. And it has blown my mind how effective it is. And even, obviously, because it's connective tissue, but even just stretching connective tissue in one part of the body affects the whole. I feel that there is release. If I'm doing my arms, for example, I can feel that there's release in my ankles. So the lymphatics, this is a recent thing, really working more on my lymphatics and just getting to know my body in terms of the lymphatics a little bit more. So spleen, I recognized last year that my spleen energy was not strong. There was definitely work to do with my spleen. So spleen, liver, I have no tonsils, but one of the things I'm going to do is work with the tonsil energy, which I know is still there. And I feel this has only just come in, but I feel that there's actually work to do where they were removed, because it's a pretty, it's a knife. It's a slight assault on the body, even though you've agreed to it. So I recognize that there's some work to do there, and the kidneys. And I felt that my lymphatics have been sludgy. That's the word that's come to mind. So I actually looked up Qigong for lymphatics. And there's not that much out there, I guess, because it's, and one of the things that one of the people was saying was that the lymphatics is a system, but it's often treated separately. So things for liver, things for spleen, things for kidneys. Yeah, so that's been some of the focus. And aside from that, planetarily, I don't even know where to start with the energies, because it's just so intense. I can feel that the energy coming through me is now different, but it's always changed. It's never been the same. It's always been different. And I don't know how much of this is just because there's more light in my own body, therefore the energy coming through is stronger, and how much is because the energy coming through is stronger. So it's been, it's just been quite a roller coaster. And a big release of emotions that have probably been there, maybe even since I was a child. Like, they've been there for a long, long time. But that's been my main focus. It's inward, but I also recognize in that it's also very collective. Whatever I'm doing for me, that there's a big collective shift as well. In the same way that the connective tissue, work on my arm, my ankle gets relieved, work on my body, it has big ripples.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 100%. Everything's connected to everything else. In Chinese medicine, in Taoism in general, everything's interconnected. The fascia is a big, when you go the higher levels of in Taoism, but also Qigong and Tai Chi and all the other Qigong style systems. Fascia is really, really important. I mean, like I said, there are, well, at least I teach, there are fascia Qigong. But there's also Qigong for the lymphatic system, but I'll have to quiz you on that one, or have a look, see what they're saying that's out there. But there are lymphatic Qigongs, but the other thing with Qigong is that everybody sees it just as the exercise, but actual massage is also seen as Qigong, and also mantras are seen as Qigong. So, is that we would, so the five sacred sounds in Taoism, they technically have, so there's 5 elements, the 5 sacred sounds, and each element has at least 2 organs, or has 2 organs, but everything else, comes off of this as well to a degree. But so with the sacred sounds, you then also have exercises that go with that, or at least massage applications that go with that. So and it works the other way. So there's certain Qigongs that have certain sounds, or so the lymphatic system. There's a couple of sounds that would relate to the lymphatic system, and like I say, it is that they sort of say, oh well, it's parts of the lymphatic system, as they do certain parts. But what's actually meant to happen is that you actually put those parts together. Like the lymphatic system has lots of different organs. Well, you put those different sounds or Qigongs together, so it becomes almost like a melody. So it becomes a stream, or it becomes a Tai Chi, because Tai Chi simply means lots of little exercises all put together. That's what Tai Chi actually is. Tai Chi Chuan, the system, Tai Chi Chuan, or qigong or martial art is actually lots of different individual qigongs all put together to create a whole. So, like musical notes put together to make a song. So that's how they do like the lymphatics and whatnot, those certain systems. And the fascia, the fascia is very, very important. It's actually the fascia is actually connected to what in Taoism is called Wu Qi. So Wu Qi is unlimited, it's the circles, unlimited possibility, but it's because it connects everything, that fascia. And it's a lot of mental stuff with the fascia. Is the fascia is affected a lot more by your actual thoughts about how you correct your posture, that your thinking, than a more of a physical thing. Though there are massages that can affect it to a degree, but because it's a whole thing, it's actually using the whole mind or the whole body to work on the fascia rather than one particular point, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. That's really interesting. So the 5 sacred sounds you mentioned, is that one per element? So there's like a sound that's linked to an element as well.
Yeah. So the sacred, well, see, this is the thing within Tao, like in the Taoism, like with the Lightcode, they've, I was taught Lightcode in Tao, in ancient philosophies in general, but especially in Taoism, Lightcode or light language has been around for centuries. That spontaneous movement, but sound is vibration, which is frequency. So there's a thing, or there's a lot within at least Taoism. You've got the 0, you've got the 1, you've got the 2, you've got the 3, you've got the 5, you've got the 6, the 7, the 8, and the 9, and then it goes, but eventually goes into 10,000 things. So there are certain sounds that are very prominent, and then there are other sounds on top. So the 5 sacred sounds are the 5 elements. So the 5 elements within Eastern philosophy, Taoist philosophy, is earth, metal, water, wood, and fire. And so there are 5 sounds that matched, 5 sacred sounds that are matched with that, and those 5 sacred sounds. So we'll do it another way. So earth is stomach and spleen. So, and it's not just stomach and spleen that it affects. There's also the earth energy. It has stomach and spleen. There is the earth energy is summer to a degree, where fire is like the Indian summer or the hottest part of the summer. There's different times. So the element there's lots of things within that element that are based around that element. But so when it comes to sacred sounds and organs of the body, you have earth is stomach and spleen. You have wood, which is liver and gallbladder. You have fire, which is heart and small intestine. You have fire goes into. I did that the wrong way around. Okay, because I said when it went into metal. No, right. So what am I doing? So earth is stomach and spleen. From earth you get metal, which is metal is heart and metal is lungs and large intestines. I'm trying to see, the energy is actually flipping me around today. So earth, metal. For metal, get into water, which is kidneys and bladder. And then from water, you go to wood, which is liver and gallbladder. And then wood goes back as a cycle, goes back to I was like, oh, have we done fire? We're not done fire yet. So wood gets burnt, it turns into fire, which is heart and small intestines. And then fire then goes back to earth. So I mucked that up a little bit. But yes, there are two major organs for each sacred sound. But then there are other sounds that actually base off other organs as well. But in essence, if you deal with those major 10, or the 5 sacred sounds as 10 major organs, and you deal with them, it ripples off to the 10,000 things. Though you can do other sounds as well, which will affect other organs or other parts of your body.
Interesting. And sound as well, like, you know, I feel we only know that much about sound, really, for all its potentiality. As you know, it's a real favourite of mine, and I'm finding that my voice is changing, that my singing voice is changing, that my speaking voice is changing. And just as I'm speaking this, I can feel I want to clear my throat. Feel a little bit of constriction there, bringing this to light. But yeah, as I kind of progress and again bring more light in and release more, that the throat is expanding, and I can, you know, it's like, oh, what do they call it? Like your octave range has expanded, but also the tonality has changed too, and I can make sounds that I didn't know that I could make. You know, if you just allow whatever sounds to come through, then those sounds are changing as well. I did a video recently, so it was one of the days, and I'm spending many days, as I say, working on my physical body in particular, bringing in more light. And this one day I was guided to record what I was doing. So it was twofold. It was me releasing energy from my body, which often comes through as a light language activation. And in the release, which was really quite forceful, you could, I don't know if you saw this, but you can feel the energy coming through. It was almost like a hacker, you know, the energy that gets brought through in a hacker. And it was ugly. It was ugly faces. It was like whatever you need to do to get the sound out. So like, you know, releasing from my hands, but pulling faces. Like I'm really being guided to do this recently, to really let my facial expression express what needs to come through. And sometimes that force behind it is what's needed to anchor these new frequencies that they are coming through into the earth. It was very dragon as well. So I was guided to record it. I'm like, oh really? Because those are the kinds of things that you just do privately, and you know, you don't really necessarily want anybody to catch you in them, to see you or anything. But this is all part of it. This is all part of the being seen in those spaces. And then I'm like, okay, so what am I going to do with this, knowing what I was being guided to do but not really wanting to? And there were some words that came through as well that were quite powerful words, because I realized that a lot of this and me not expressing this has meant that my body, there's been fire, but my body has become inflamed because the fire wasn't being released. So to be witnessed doing that was important on many levels. And it was about me not being meek anymore as well. You know, it's like no more pushover, no more yes sir, no more like whatever there's been in the past. And I sent it to a couple of people, and neither of them saw it. And I found myself the next morning doing the post for it on Facebook and being like, oh really, this is what we're doing, is it? But I kind of knew that had to be done. And so some of the people that watched that felt release in their own bodies too. And I thought that would probably happen, but I didn't know for sure. But it was interesting, almost wanting validation, bearing in mind the nature of what it was that I was sharing, because it's like, now that's a bit meek. Wanting the validation was a little bit meek as well. So I kind of knew that it just had to be done, whether or not people were like, yeah, go for it. It was like, no, this just has to be shared. And really very well received. I don't think it's one that I'm going to put on YouTube. I don't think, but you never know. Because not all light language activations are pretty, you know? Often it's the divine feminine that comes through, but often it's that real, like, wow, you know, that real, that raw. And that was the title of it. It was Raw, Raw, Raw. So raw as in ROAR, RAW, ROAR, and just letting that raw out.
Yeah, and see, because this has always been my, my thing. Well, like you mentioned the hacker and the hacker, as far as I was like taught, the hacker is Lightcode. The hacker is an ancient, is and this ancient energy coming through. Now they've learned it as a sequence. They've learned it. They've learnt it, as a routine or to a degree, and but they know it's about letting the spirit out. But even within that, they do moves, or they'll they do the chanting and they'll just pull the faces, and the whole idea is those spirits coming out. In the West, we would tend to see that as, oh, that's dark, oh, that's negative, and it's like it's not at all. It's it's the energy being the energy. It's almost like the Walt Disney Mooland when you first see Mushu, and you only see shadow, and he's like this big booming voice and all this fire, and then suddenly he walks out the light of the little stone, and it's this tiny little dragon. But and it's sort of like that. It's like this energy may appear opposing, but it's full of light and full of positivity, and it's all about that growth. That's the whole thing. So yeah, the hacker, a lot of the Indian shaman, they would do Lightcode. It was all about information coming through, for sure. And it's interesting. It is interesting that like I've been, my life has always been, with movement, and I'm using, it's not just this, I'm actually using, the energy in the hands, bringing it out through the body. And yeah, and especially if I do dragon code, so dragon light code, the face acts in a certain way, and there's a lot of people who say when I do the either dragon dog empowerments or dragon dog light code, is that you start looking like a dragon dog, Boggy. You look like a dragon anyway, but you really start looking like a dragon. And I think that's part of the energy as well. That's part of the point. It's you're mimicking that frequency. You're radiating that frequency, and it's just an interesting thing. I think is like we've sort of or at least in the West, we sort of see like the dragons, like worse things. All dragons are evil, they're bad. And it's like nothing is all bad and nothing is all good. It is what it is. What it is. But we've sort of we've put frighteners there. We've sort of put blockages there to block certain energies, and or you shouldn't do that because it looks silly, or what would people think? And I think the expression, or when you look at kids don't care how they look when they're doing something, or they don't even care how it sounds if they're singing and there's dolphins in the Atlantic Ocean going where because it's so squeaky, or they don't care. That it's opening up, and it's us, it's our egos that have sort of put these restrictions on where that sounds too dark, or you shouldn't do that looks silly, or that. And when you take away those inhibitions, when you take away those filters, the universe can channel through you far more freely, far more open. If you're afraid to say certain things, or to say, that's the whole thing with channeling. Like people say, like channelers don't control. Channelers control what they're channeling a lot more than most people think, because a lot of the time the unknown channelers have said, well, they wanted me to say this, but I didn't think that was appropriate, so I didn't say it. And it's like, okay, but It's, and or where you have people say, this didn't make any sense, blue, but blue barnacles, didn't make any sense to me. But then I said it to the person, and my uncle loved blue barnacles. He always would, that was the name of his ship, and or the name of his pet dog. And it's that when we restrict stuff, when we pull back, we are actually blocking stuff. We're filtering out part of that universe. And there's a thing in Qigong actually called spontaneous Qigong, which is where you allow yourself to freely move, freely, if you want to start singing, making noise, making clucking noises, moving around like a turkey, whatever, in spontaneous Qigong, you're meant to really let go. And it's one of those really tough thing, interesting and tough things, because to be that spontaneous, but to be that free, to allow yourself whatever's coming through, to let it through, that is, that's a very powerful thing. And to do it anywhere is one thing, but then to record it and to do it publicly, it takes, that is courage. There's big strength there and a big courage there, because it doesn't matter how much you say you don't care. There are a lot of people who really do. In a way, is that somebody might get offended, or I'm not sure about this, and it's that freedom of, there's a true power there of being able to totally allow yourself to just do what you need. What the universe, or let that energy flow and just let it be. To be that spontaneous is can be a very learning experience.
It felt like an initiation. That's the word that just dropped in as you were speaking. Then it was like, yeah, and there was a big shift inside me for doing it too. And I certainly care less than I've ever done what people think. I'm not saying it's gone completely, but I'm less and less bothered, really, which presumably means that I'm less judgmental about myself too. If I'm receiving judgments externally, it's because I'm judging myself, and I feel really at peace. And it's interesting when you can gauge where you were before. Like there are markers. For me, birthday is a big one, and Christmas as well. So I can usually remember who I was the year before and where I was at. So I can see that there's been a shift. And I can feel it in talking to you as well. Like it's probably, I don't know, I don't think we've spoken this year. I think it was last year sometime. It's been a fair while, and I can feel it in both of us too. I can feel it in you, because I know you've had a big year, but I can feel, I can feel that there's been big shifts in me. And you can't always see it when you're right in it. You can't always see it, because I've been so internal, less and less with other people, even online. Like my online stuff has really pulled back too. And I'm wondering if I'm starting to come out of that, because I'd like to think that one day I have a bit more energy to do things. I like to think that one day, I'll be able to do a few things in a week rather than just one or two. Because I used to have a Denise day once a week. Now it's completely reversed. I'm having Denise days most day, and like a day where I try and fit everything in that I'm doing, so that I have many, many, many other days free to just be and do what feels right. But I've been really enjoying being in the garden and planting things and connecting even more to nature. Like that's another energy that's very present and very amusing. Like the birds are almost flying into me. It's like I'm so a part of nature, of the trees, that they're almost flying into me. And I think my energy probably shifts as they come close. So that's why they veer off. But there was one today that kind of, was flying into the trees behind me, but it skimmed me. And I'm feeling the interactions with nature as well are way, way stronger, they're clearer. There's much more of a reciprocation going on. The voices from nature, from the trees, from the birds, is way, way louder. Part of me really wants to do an animal communication course, but I'm also feeling, Denise, you don't actually need to do that. You just need to like turn the volume up a little bit more and trust and believe that you can do it without that.
Yeah, there's a big thing on that. Sort of going back to this spontaneous qigong, is that there's a thing of that, you know, eventually the goal is to be formless. You know, is our first, or especially in Taoism, there is this the thing about form and formless. Is that form? So like the barefoot doctor learns all these forms. So all, you know, so he learns the 5 elements. And you know, I mentioned the 5 sacred sounds. Well, actually, you know, even within the 5 sacred sounds, there's actually a yin and a yang, a feminine and masculine. So there's 2 sounds within that sound. And then if you wanted to delve really deeper, there's actually another 3 sounds within that sound. So there's actually 6 sounds within that sound, because you've got 3 of the masculine and 3 of the feminine of each one of those different sounds. So you know, so like the barefoot doctor sort of thing is this energy of there's always a form, you know, there's always a rule, there's always, you know, something you can learn. So learning the forms at first can be important, because, you know, you're understanding how processes work and you're understanding stuff, but it feeds that monkey mind of, I need stuff, I need knowledge, I need to, you know, and very much in the West we have lecturers, you know, lecturers, or, you know, doctors and lecturers of knowledge of stuff. Now the Taoist belief is that it's all very well it being knowledge, but if there isn't a practical side to it, if there isn't an emotional side to it, that knowledge is empty. You know, it's just knowledge. And so it's this understanding, you know, about those forms, about the structures within the forms. But then the ultimate goal in Taoism is to become formless in the essence of. The easiest way to explain that is you learn your ABCs, so you can make the words, and you learn, you learn about the vowels and the consonants, and what does what, and what, you know, when you put these letters together, it sounds like this. You put these letters, and it sounds like that. But then it gets to a point where you take that form and you just go with it. You become formless, where you sound things out. A new word comes along, and okay, let's see if I can work this out. And you just go with the flow. So the instant concept is that your ultimate goal is that everybody thinks, you know, it's to learn more and more and more, and it is to a degree, but it's to learn it in a way that there is no end, that there is no limit to how much you can learn. And but also is to be formless, is to know in the essence that yes, you can, you know, you can learn, or you can help yourself to a degree with learning outside stuff, or learning from a book or another teacher. But sometimes the energy is formless. Sometimes the energy is from yourself. Is that if you tune into the universe, you can learn from the universe itself. You can, yeah, or at least when it comes to, say, Lightcode, you know, that's the whole point, is that rather than saying, it's got to sound like this, and it's got to be this, this, and this, it can be whatever it is. It can be however it needs to be. And I find it really interesting that, say, 10 years ago, with Lightcode, mine was always very unique. Mine was always very different to everybody else's. But now my uniqueness is becoming less and less and less, because people are flowing that way. And I see that as a good thing. You know, I see that as people are finding, you know, are connecting to that formlessness, you know, is that they're not restricted. And in essence, that's sort of what the Taoist philosophy is that the balance isn't this straight line on a set of scales trying to become dead straight. balance in Taoism is actually a wave, and there's an up and a down, but it's constant. It's constantly moving. A little bit with the five elements, they're like a season, so they're constantly rotating. So you go into one, into the other, into the other, into the other. So when you're that formlessness, the way is that, you know, is that you just flow. You go through one thing to the next, to the next. A bit like rappers, you know, is that where they learn so many different styles or words that eventually there's a couple of guys out there who can say, tell me 5 things, and you tell them 5 things and they put them in a rap there in front of you. And that for me is formlessness, you know, is that they're taking away that restriction and just going with the flow, and they're coming up with that information without restrictions. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and there's so many more, as you say, there's so many more people getting into that space now. It's amazing. In the same way that there's so many more people doing light language and, you know, doing light codes as well now. Like it's really, which is awesome. And I feel, you know, it's almost the precursor to telepathy. Because if you ask a question of the universe, sometimes you can feel the download come in, and it's like you're giving big packets of information that you don't hear the words of it necessarily, but it drops in. And sometimes that's when we get those you know, whistle sounds those high-pitched sounds in our ears. But sometimes when you just speak light language, it then drops in further, so you understand it as well. So then you can maybe then explain it in English. But I feel we're moving to the space of, I'll ask you a question and you'll just go boom and give me the answer, not in words. It might be in pictures, it might be in whatever form, but you're sending me then a packet of information that I then go, because that often happens. I know when I was teaching Reiki, and I remember my Reiki master saying to me, it's all right to say you don't know. If someone asks you a question and you don't know, it's all right to say that. You don't have to know everything. But often someone would ask a question and you don't know the answer, but by the time they've finished answering the question, you find that you do know the answer. And you're like, that's interesting. Thank you for that. I didn't know that, but here it is coming out of my mouth. Similar thing.
That's the whole point. I mean, there are people, my girlfriend actually, Alice Wells, who she can, you know, for her, like she hears light language and she can actually translate it, or, you know, right, that's, you know, that's saying this and that's that. And I think, definitely, like we, you know, whether you call it code or language, it's information. It's information to be downloaded. And the Taoistically, my Sifu's always said that the universe is talking to you all the time. It never stops talking. It never stops talking to you, but it can talk to you in thoughts or feelings. It can talk to you in animals or the wind or the movement of the tree or the way the sunlight hits you. But the universe talks all the time. But the issue is that most people have their eyes too shut, their ears too closed, and are not allowing that information to come in. So so there was this, well, you know, the whole thing in very subtly, very secretly in a way, the whole thing of Qigong and meditation is to actually open you up, is to allow you to expand, is allow you to pay more attention to the universe. My teachers always, I always saw that, you know, we as a, I don't need to use the word soul as such, because soul is the soul from the body of breath, the Latin of body of breath. But your consciousness is formless. Your consciousness is shapeless. We sort of try to think, it looks like this and it looks like that, and I remember in in meditations especially, I've meditated, and there's a meditation called the Island where you go to this place in your mind. It's in your mind, and it's basically, it's you. You are the island, and bits of the island represent different parts of you. But it can also be like a virtual reality. It could be a place where you can, you know, do stuff and see stuff. And there was, you know, I was meditating at the island, and there was these beings that come in, and well, they were dressed up as, like, you know, like free sages, and it was like, for, you know, I felt sort of like, but that's not your real form. You know, you're showing me a form, but that's not your real form. What's your real form? And for me, in this meditation, like, are you ready? So, and they changed, and they just suddenly changed into different stuff. But one of them just became mist, just became, and it was that they had no form, but they, you know, things come to us in packages, or things come to us in things that we can understand and receive. But the true information is far bigger than that, or even formless. It doesn't have any real form to it. It's just pure energy. And sort of, so for me, there was that understanding of, you know, is that, you know, there are, you can see a beautiful sky, or you can see, you know, there are some things, and somebody says, you know, if you try to describe it, you would say there are no words. There are no words to describe what I've seen, what, you know, what I have, what that is. And it's this understanding of that, you know, that energy has no, we in this reality, this dimension, we try to put things in boxes. We try to describe things in words, and sometimes words are never enough. You know, words and no description will give that thing justice. And it's that. So sometimes it's just understanding that it's, you know, it's not meant. Not everything's meant to make sense. You know, and some things are just meant to raise your consciousness, is to push your boundaries that little bit further, so you see and perceive that little bit more. And yeah, the boggy tangent.
Yeah, no, I totally with you on that. Are you finding memory is changing? Like, it's hard to remember things that have happened, because I almost feel like I've had a few different lives in this one. So I had like my nursing life, my life in Australia, and then life since I've been back, and it's really interesting. So let me see if I can describe this. When I used to think of something that had happened in the past, it was like it was over there, it was behind me. And sometimes things are like here. Now they're at the side of me. They're not kind of behind me, but they're not as far away. It's like it's just here. Not that it was in the past, but it's just here. And I don't know if that makes any sense at all. But the memory stuff is so interesting. So there must be some portal on my staircase, which means that I go upstairs and I've gone through the portal. So it's erased whatever the reason for me going upstairs or in the other room was. And I'm feeling that, because memory is it's a funny thing, memory. Is it stored in our mind? I don't think so. I think some things are, like we store things in all parts of our body, in our cells, but it's almost like we're connecting to a memory bank almost, and then pulling the memories in. But it's like there's some shift going on with that within our bodies, within our minds too, because our mind is clearly changing. Do I mean our mind or our brain? Both probably, but our brain, our physical brain is changing so much. So it's, yeah, I find it really interesting, and the heart holding memory too, because it's got a little brain in the heart. So there was the case of, I remember hearing Greg Greg Braden talking about this. So a lady had a heart transplant, and she started getting flashbacks of the last few moments of the person's life, and the person was killed, the person was murdered, and she could see the person that it was that killed her. And it was so strong that she ended up going to the police and did a description and blah, blah, blah. And the person was actually prosecuted and found guilty of the murder. So that's really interesting, that suggests. And is it actually memory, or is it part of the consciousness still being in there? Like, I don't know. I can't fully understand that. I can't fully comprehend that.
I know within, you know, like, cause I love Greg Braden, and also Bruce Lipton, his mate, his buddy. I suddenly had a memory loss myself then. But Greg Braden and Bruce Lipton, they're great buddies, and because they've actually found that both their information is actually blending together, and there's a whole thing. There was experiments done that with the older, not ANPR, the old scanning machines in the hospitals. I forgot the acronym for it, but MRI. Thank you. Yeah, so the MRIs, and they were actually finding that with the MRI, and there's another experiment they was doing, that they're actually saying that your consciousness actually seems to be outside the body, and you know, because we will say, well, our perception, well, where are we conscious? It seems to literally be outside, and it sends information in, because they were looking in the MRI in a certain way, and information was coming from the outside. It was that the brain was receiving information, then doing certain things, and it's like, say, so where's, you know, but it's, you know, it's that person's doing, you know, it's that person, but where is this information coming from? And they started to say, they started to put forward that consciousness seems to actually be outside the body, which they know there is a field outside the body. The heart has a biomagnetic and electrical field around it, and the happier you become, the more it expands. The more scared or angry you become, the more it contracts. And this field, for most people, if they're reasonably healthy, is at least partly outside of their body. But people are really happy, so it expands more and more. And it was said that both Mother Teresa and Gandhi were known that people could feel them, you know, from a village away, you know, when they were coming, and they now believe it was this bioelectric energy, which is basically like a Torah field, which goes back into the ancient knowledge and the ancient five spirits, that the Torah is one of our energy systems. But they believe now that, you know, this Torah, that's, like I say, is coming from the outs. It's so big, it's actually on the outside. You know, that the energy, our consciousness, is actually bigger than our physical body, and so it actually comes from the outside. Now, when the transplants, it is that information, that data that's stored in there, is also being coming through, because I know that they say you actually have, there's brain cells in the heart, there's memory in the heart, but there's also brain cells in the gut as well. Within the solar plexus, they found brain cells down there. So you remember from here, you can remember from here, as well as, if that's feasible, we remember from here. But there was Greg Braden, actually, there was a couple, I can't remember the illness, but there's an illness where it actually eats away the whole brain, and there's literally just the inside of the brain's all gone, and there's literally like a paper thin sliver on the outside. And there was people with this condition who were still thinking normally, talking, communicating, and yet medically there was nothing inside their brain, that their brain had been eaten away, and there was literally a thin layer of the brain left. So it made them think about, what consciousness is and where it is, because this whole thing of, oh, it's in the brain, and you're inside your body, is starting to be less and less true. The information is sort of changing.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that we are incarnate now at this time, because I find, there's a lot of science stuff that I find really, really fascinating. And I love how science and spirituality are kind of really coming together now. So a lot of Eastern philosophies and Eastern ways of thinking and being are being proved more now by science. But I find it fascinating, all the things that are coming out now. I am super, super grateful to be alive and witnessing all that's going on.
Yeah. Me too. I mean, it's like, well, the interview show, The Way of Conscious Mindfulness, it's all about that balance between spirituality and science. And I frustrate a lot of people because, say I love the ancient knowledge and the spiritual knowledge, but I also love science, because science more and more is proving, the quantum physics, but there's certain science that's actually proving the ancient knowledge that has actually gone, well, actually we've got evidence that this now exists because of this, and it's happened. There's a lot of science, obviously a lot of science out there that sort of being pushed to one side, pseudoscience, or it's not true. But when you start looking at it, there's all that information is there. And yeah, now is definitely an interesting time to be born, because there's lots of things happening. Everything's coming up to the surface. And, in essence, the name Borgi means the balance, the balancing and the balancer between the chaos and the calmness, or it means a storm and the calm before the storm, or a hurricane and the still point, the center point of the hurricane. That both of these exist at the same time, both of these conflicting things. And the reason I bring that up is that especially in the last 20 years, but especially the last decade, we are living in Boggy. Boggy is definitely, we are in both chaos and calmness at the same time. Certain things are coming so more crystal clear and understanding so much more, and other things, are right to the edge, and it is a very interesting time we're in. That I think there's chaos amongst us, and most people can't even see it, and then other people can't see the calmness or the wood for the tree. There is both realities, both are true exactly at the same time. I just find it it's a very interesting time to be alive. But I also do believe that what we've been talking about is about, expanding, letting things go, trying to become formless, trying to allow yourself to always see more, and just know there's always more out there. I think that's the most important thing to do, because the confusion and the chaos is trying to narrow you down and restrict your viewpoint on what you're seeing. And I think it's there is no good, or to me there is no good or bad, there just is. And I don't think whether it's people, a person, the universe, whatever, doing this chaos and the chaos, the darkness that's around now, I don't actually see it as a bad thing as such, because I just see it as it's a teacher trying to teach you something, and you can learn one thing or you can learn the other. You can learn to go with the flow, give, and step away from living in that fear or living in that anger, or you can be consumed by it. It's giving you two options, and I think this whole opposing opposites of this whole things are good or bad, things are this or that, left or right, you're a man or you're a woman. I think things have always been far more blurred than that. There's a lot more in between, and there's a lot more to understand and know. But I think you do it from expanding your heart, letting go of what you think and just flowing with things the best you can. But as any good Darrow should say, hey, what do I know?
And the heart is that neutral point, isn't it? The heart is that 0 point.
Yeah.
And more in the work that I do in my own body, and if I'm doing any grid work, any kind of clearing work, a difference in the way that I do that these days is to bring things into my heart. Whereas before it was often just, wanting the pain out of my body, like pushing it away. But now it's a different process of bringing it in. And sometimes it almost feels like the universe will present things and, well, can you bring this into your heart? Can you love this? Whether it's about myself or what's being witnessed, in the players of the world, there's more and more things being revealed that are having the light shed on them. And they were always there. We just didn't know about them. But it's, can you love yourself when you're going through that? Can you have compassion for that person that is seen as being, whatever terms people want to use? Yeah, the heart, as Dr. Joe always says as well, it's like, breathe it into your heart, bring it into your heart. It's so key.
Yeah, and the heart, I within the old knowledge of Taoism is that the heart, everything is alchemy, or you can turn things into alchemy, and the heart is the center of alchemy. In the 5 elements, the heart and the small intestines are fire. Is that they are represented by fire, so the heart is a fiery thing. In alchemy, when you're turning, say, at least when you're turning a lead into something, lead into gold, or you need to melt, so you of the fire, you need the heart to be able to alchemize, to be able to change that stuff. So I think, at least like doctor's point of view, that's why the heart is so important, because that's where we all, you hear or they often hear the saying of about passion and compassion, and within Jing, which is like the free energy, not the 3 of the main energies. There are many main energies, but 3 of them are Qi, Jing, and Shen. So Qi is physical vitality, Jing is emotional vitality, and Shen is spiritual vitality. And Shen is also seen as, these energies can be considered both uncultivated and cultivated, but your job is to turn one into the other. So your body, when it's unfit, you can turn that body into fitness and have it super fit. When you're unstable in your emotions and you're all up and down and little things affect you, you can balance your emotions so that you're nothing but going to that unconditional love. And that's when the Jing is in the heart. And Jing is, so the heart it fuels the Jing, and Jing is emotional vitality. So you have that rawness, which is the passion of life, but turning that passion into compassion, unconditional love is your goal. Like, there's all these raw energies, we're up, down, left, right. But the whole point of bringing it back to the heart is using that fire, using that emotional vitality, the fire and the Jing, to create, to eventually alchemize things into a way that you find that unconditional love.
That's really interesting. That was a bit of a, heart being the fire, because you would assume heart was water because of the emotions. Like, that's what I associate with heart. But I really got what you said there about it's the force, the melting, of the transmutation. That really makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Well, typical Taoists, everything has everything in it. So it is that the yin and the yang in the Tai Chi symbol, the black and the white symbol. Yang is the white bit with the little black dot. Yin is the black bit with the little white dot, and that's actually called Tai Chi. Its actual name, that symbol's name is the Tai Chi symbol. It's Tai Chi. And the whole idea is that if it was to be stagnant, as in half black, half white, that is actually yin yang. That's opposing opposites. But when they're balanced, they flow together and they continue like a dynamo to build up energy, and that becomes Tai Chi. So this idea, like with the heart, is, well, in yin and yang, you have so yang is the fire and yin is the water. So George Lucas actually used yin and yang, the whole Taoist concept. And Qi is the force, and the yin was seen as the Sith, the dark side of the force, and the yang was seen as the Jedi, the light side of the force. But when you balance them, you create Tai Chi, you create the Tao, and though they're not technically it was in the original stories, but Disney sort of corrupted it slightly. But what was supposed to happen in Disney, in Star Wars, that you've got the grey code, the grey Jedi. They balanced both the fire and the water. They balanced the light and the dark. They balanced their emotions, their physical body, and their spirit. So, yes, it's fire at first because it's, the raw emotions, but that fire can turn into water. And when fire and water balance together, it becomes steam, and steam can go through the smallest rocks. It can burn, but also it can cool down suddenly, and it's formless, it's shapeless. So that whole idea of balancing those two energies to create a new energy itself, and it's not about being totally robotic or totally unemotional, but it's not about being so emotional you're like a caveman and attacking everything or trying to bonk everything. It's balancing those energies. It's learning to have that passion, and that turning that into compassion, learning how to understand things and understand people. But hey, is any good to Okay, I'm going to have to actually go for this one because I'm down to 8% of energy. So my phone keeps flashing at me. So it's been a great show. Thank you so much. It's great to be back again. And I think we got one booked up for next month.
No, I'll do it.
Cool. And so if anybody would like to find you and find out more about what you do, how could they find you?
YouTube is In a Piece with Denise. Facebook, there is 2 Facebook pages. There's the Love Speaks Love page and Denise's Frequency of Love page, which are more the kind of business pages. There's my personal profile, Denise Chadwick. And I get a bit lost with friend requests, so it might be easy to follow unless you kind of send me a message as well. No website as yet, but that's something tinkering in the background.
Indeed, I keep going through websites like Sweeties. I have one, and then I get another one, and then I get another one. So, yes, but anyway, so awesome. So I'll be looking forward to for our discussions again next month. And so, guys, I hope you enjoyed this show. There is every single week there are going to be some new The Way of Conscious Mindfulness shows. Me and Doc, we are going to do one next month for what's after July? August. Or was it June? I've forgotten. Where are we?
August.
Who am I?
August is next. We're in July.
We are in July. Yeah, I see. See, I don't know what time, what year, what dimension I'm in half the time.
What planet?
So, so August. So, yes, that's it for now. So, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you very much. Denise, don't go anywhere just yet. But everybody else, until next time, well, don't forget you can find me on Facebook on The Way of Conscious Mindfulness, also The Way of Seafood Boggy. You can find me on Instagram under seafood.boggy. You can find me on YouTube. You may be watching it right now on YouTube on Seafood Boggy. Or you may be listening to this on Spotify. You can find me on Spotify either under Seafood Boggy and or The Way of Conscious Mindfulness. And finally, you can also find me on the awesome, amazing Bring Me to Life network, and which I'm on there with many other great shows. So have a look at that. So take care. Bye for now. And until next time, remember, open your mind to the way, the conscious way, the way of conscious mindfulness.